Welcome, I'm Solio, guest editor for Rewind Memories on Repeat. In this art book, a collection of collages, Beau McCall tells the story of his dearly departed friends, using archival photos, mostly photographed by him, and images from his button artwork. In many families, buttons are keepsakes and hold memories as they are passed down through generations. The visual remixing of photos with the buttons provide depth, abstraction, and a sense of nostalgia. The collages capture the late 1970s to the mid-1980s, from Philadelphia to New York, during the LGBTQ+ rights movement, the height of disco music, and the AIDS crisis. They tell the story of a group of eclectic, dynamic, creative, and loving individuals who made Beau happy. He met most of them when he was 19, living in Philadelphia and still coming to terms with his sexual identity. They were his introduction to the LGBTQ+ community. Whether they were hanging out at the disco, having a house party, attending a concert, or in band rehearsals for his original group Strange Beauties, composed of Beau, Antoine, aka Dee Samore, and Tracy Monroe, they found strength in each other. This is the story of the power of memories to keep bonds alive, the beauty of friendship to help us thrive, the power of love to help us heal, and the indomitable spirit of the LGBTQ+ community. And now, we invite you to get to know Beau's friends.
I met Seifer Dean around 1978, the Olympia Ballroom in West Philadelphia. It actually was the first gay club I had ever been to, and it was the first time I saw two men slow dance, and I had seen men dance before, but I was fascinated because I had never seen that before. And I remember the first time I came in and I saw that, I immediately wanted to come back the next week to see it again. But anyway, Seifer Dean was in there that night, and like I said, he terrorized the place, especially when Hamilton Bohannon came on. He just went crazy. So I had a lot of good memories because that was like my introduction of being in a LGBTQ+ atmosphere, because it was any and everybody was in there. And in the beginning it was fascinating. I just stood around and stared at everybody. You know, we had a good time. At the time I met him, he was presenting himself as Debbie. So I could still visualize him in this loud orange outfit with this little scarf that he was wearing. And then a few years later, he became Sister Aisha. And Sister Aisha was a Muslim. And he actually was going to the temple. He actually was studying Islam. And one of the girls, one of the females, told the brothers that he was not a biological woman. So he got expelled from the religion, the mosque rather. Then he reemerged as Seifer Dean. Seifer Dean was a card. He was a lot of fun, a lot of energy. If you went to the club and they played Bohannon's Let's Start the Dance, no matter what form he was in, he could have been Debbie, he could have been Aisha, he could have been Seifer Dean, he would have tore the club to pieces. I could just see him now going crazy. By the way, you still owe me $5 and you made me miss my cousin's wedding. Seifer Dean passed around circa 1996, 97, somewhere around that area of the AIDS virus. Seifer Dean passed in New York. He had moved to New York before I did. He had been here quite a few years. We didn't make a lot of contact when I was here. I saw him a few times, but we kind of, went our separate ways. I don't know how I found out that he had the virus. Well, actually, our friend Tracy, because they were living together for some period in time. And I think she told me that he had the virus. And it was almost like he didn't have it. Because like we didn't discuss it. And then I remember going over there maybe a month or so before he had passed. And, it was just like old times. We talked and laughed or what have you. And he had this huge picture of Grace Jones in his living room. And I was like, I want the picture because, out of all of us, I could appreciate the picture, and I probably would still have the picture this day. He promised me this picture, but, he didn't really think he was going to expire, so he didn't want me to have the picture, so I never got it. So that was it. We went through a whole lot of things. I still love him. I loved him at the time, and I still love him. I cherish it. We had a great, 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 great time. I met Bianca in Philly around 1982, 83. I first met Bianca as Cortez. Cortez was a teenager. He was this tall, really, really cute boy. Big old round face, cute little smile. And at the time I was working in this adult bookstore. I was working a graveyard shift. And I used to get him he would come in the store. We just struck up a conversation because all types of people was coming in the store. So he ended up being my little errand boy, and he would go to the store and get me stuff to eat and whatever it is that I needed, and I would get him a few things, and then it became regular. He would come mainly on the weekend and just run errands for me. But he was a very, very sweet person, very innocent, very naive, and he just got caught up. He got caught up in the wrong atmosphere, and it just took him out. He was murdered. I don't know the exact details on what happened, but I think it was some kind of love quarrel or what have you. That really hurt me because he was so young. Every time I talk about it, I get really emotional, but he was really young because like I said, when I met him, he was a teenager, so he probably was in his early 20s. And when I found out about it, it just tore me apart. I think about him often. Which I should say her, because the last time I saw her, she was presenting herself as Bianca. We used to go to thrift shops all the time, and me and Antoine, we went to this thrift shop. Matter of fact, it was Salvation Army in Southwest Philly on Woodland Avenue, and we would go in there with like $50, and we would get ball gowns, shimmy dresses, T-strap dresses. Well, actually, we had dresses for every vintage star. We had Lucille Ball dresses. We had this blondie black dress that we fought over. And then I had this black sequence T-strap dress. It was like from the 60s. It was huge, but I just bought it anyway. None of us could wear it. And Bianca was very tall, not big boned, but a tall young person. And when I saw him, I said, I have this dress for you. So fine, so I saw her again, and I had the dress, and I gave her the dress. And when I saw her in the dress, she looked just like a doll. She looked like somebody just took the wrappers off the box, and she stepped out of the box. I couldn't have picked a better person to wear that dress, because she wore that dress. And this is another story. Somebody came home and told me, it's this new queen in town, and this bitch got the best legs in town. And I always prided myself with having the best legs in town. So I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. So, finally we meet. I saw him. I saw the legs that everybody was talking about. He did have a great pair of legs, but not better than mine. And we immediately, we hit it off. And he was somebody else. He had an apartment. And we spent a lot of time in Joey's apartment. And Joey was a big, enormous Dionne Warwick fan. You couldn't play nobody else's music in his house, in his apartment. You only could play Dionne. And Whitney Houston got a pass because she's Dionne's cousin. So, you know, a lot of times we just be joking like, oh my God, we gotta listen to Dion, we gotta listen to Dion. I love Dion, don't get me wrong. But, you know, all day, 24 hours a day, Joey was very, very prissy. And then he started presenting himself as Erica Worrell, his alter ego. And Erica he wanted to be like a Dion. He wanted to have that, well, he did. Very classy, very sophisticated. He didn't do half of the stuff that we did. And image-wise, some of his looks were like a mature woman, where we was trying to be rock stars and, you know, taking a walk on the wild side. I didn't want to present myself the way he presented himself, but it worked for him. It was fun, very loving person, very close to his family, very close to his mother. We had a great time, and he was on the verge of going into politics. Now, I don't know how that was going to pan out because he was doing drag at the time, so he might have been before his time. But he was another person. He went to Bethune-Cookman in Florida. We heard a lot of stories about Daytona Beach, and he used to do this little dance that he used to call the Daytona Beach Shuffle. I'm not a dancer, so I can't show it to y'all. But it was this little shuffle that he used to do. It was so funny to me. Joey passed around, I think, 95. And the ironic thing is that he passed and my uncle passed at the same time. And their funerals were on the same day. I ended up not going to my uncle's funeral and went to Joey's funeral. Again, he was on the verge of having a political career. I don't know where he was going to start at, but those are the conversations that we were having at the time. Joey passed from AIDS, and the odd thing about him is, you know, I watched him wither away, but he would never say that he had the virus. He would never say that he had AIDS. I met Tony in the late 70s. We all lived in the same neighborhood, but Tony was a friend of Tracy's. So I met Tony at Tracy's house. Tony is my second brother in the community, because I don't like claiming people, but he was somebody that I claimed. Tony was very funny. He had a certain kind of wit about him. And between all of us that was in our group, he was actually the first person to have an apartment. So occasionally, you know, we would go over to Tone's house and we would spend the night, and, you know, during this time we smoke our weed and have our little cocktails and just sit up all night, listen to records and talk shit about each other. But it was good, clean fun. While we were working in the bookstore, when we used to do inventory, our boss used to be all on top of our back to make sure we documented this inventory correctly and that everything that came in got documented and nothing disappeared. So a lot of times he would get distracted, he would be on the phone, or he would be outside in front of the store. And that's when we would take stuff out of the boxes and we would throw it underneath the counter. And when I say throw it underneath the counter was on a platform. And the platform had this little space in it where you could hide things in it. So, you know, we would take stuff out of the box. It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, throw it under the counter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, throw it under the counter. So it would be dildos, it would be candy panties, it would be all kind of vibrators, all kind of sexual paraphernalia that we would throw under the counter. So when he would leave, later on in the evening, we would sell it and pocket the money. So since we had the shifts on lock, the three of us, so I didn't sell it, Tracy would sell it, or Tone would sell it. So after Tone stopped working there. He started working at Smart Place, which was one of the only gay clubs, only black gay clubs in Philadelphia. Tone was a bartender on the second floor. Tone was well liked. He was well received. He made great cocktails. He had great banter. If you wanted to know all the gossip that was going on with anybody in the club, Tone knew it. He's somebody that I sadly miss, and I approached somebody that we knew on Facebook and was inquiring about him maybe a year or so ago, and they told me Tone had passed maybe 5 years prior to us having the conversation. And another loss. I love Tone. Again, Tone and Charles, they were like my brothers. I met James in the late 90s. I met James through Trey. I think they went to school together. They went to college together in Florida, and James was actually from Florida. But he moved to DC. So during Pride Week, the first time I met him, we went to DC for Pride, and we stayed with James and his roommate, Jimmy. James was very laid back, very handsome, very regal. He had a certain kind of air about him. Something like Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince, but just a little more laid back. He wasn't like a jokester. Very informative, very educated. He spoke well. His diction was well. It was just, he was a person that you wanted to know. He was very caring. He just had like a genuine softness about him. And when he spoke, he had a really soft tone in his voice. And then he wrote this letter in the book. I can't go verbatim what he said in the letter, but I really didn't, he never really verbalized how he felt about me. When I met him, I liked him immediately. That really doesn't happen for me all the time, but this time we just clicked instantly. Then we would go to the clubs during Pride. We would go to the daytime activities. I think we saw CeCe Peniston one year, and then we went to see this play, and then I think we went to tracks. We would go to tracks, and And me and him, we was sort of laid back. I think that's why we connected, because he wasn't a dancer, and neither was I. He used to have this thing he called I Love James Day. And I Love James Day was celebrating his birthday, which I never knew when his birthday was. I don't think none of us knew when his birthday was. So he would randomly pick a day, and that would be the day that we would celebrate his birthday. And then he made this cassette tape. It was Brandy, it was the Winans, it was Vanessa Williams. It was all the songs that he loved that he would play during this celebration. That was really funny that he came up with that concept. We all went to Trey's funeral. And then after Trey passed, I kind of lost contact with James. The reason why I lost contact with him, I had the wrong last name. And, I was going back and forth over the years, trying to research, because social media came about and the internet. And I was looking for him, but I had the wrong last name. And when I finally figured out what his last name was, I stumbled across his obituary. And that's how I found out that he passed. So I don't know how he passed. It was recently, maybe like 5 years ago, I think it was 2013. I was floored. I was floored because we had so much in common and we had so much to continue as far as our relationship was concerned. First met Trey, I think I met Trey on 13th Street. Trey was another person who could sing, who liked to sing. He had like a Sylvester Nick Ashford type of voice, a really gospel type of voice. And a lot of times the queens would be out on the corner just screaming and hollering, singing church songs or singing club songs like they were in church or what have you. I think that's how I met him. What we had in common, he was a lover of music and so was I. From A to Z. He liked country music, jazz, hip hop, R&B, you name it, he had it. So we would go CD shopping. We would see stuff like Barbara Mandrell or Vicky Carr or something like that. I'm like, I don't want that. I don't listen to that. He was like, oh no, so-and-so likes this. And when they come over, I have something for them to play. So whoever he would invite over, he had a smorgasbord of selections of music. Like he had one room that was full of CDs from the floor to the ceiling. He had about 10 or 15 racks. He had everything separated into different categories. And then he made me this tape with this song that he ad-libbed called Gotta Go. Hilarious. Hilarious. I listen to it occasionally from time to time. You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. He was on the verge of getting into comedy. So he did get a chance to perform. I forget the name of the club in Philly. He was the only gay comedian on the bill. He did really well because he was funny as hell, and then he had a head full of his own hair. So when we would go shopping, like one time we went shopping, he was getting some kind of house appliance. I don't know whether it was a refrigerator or a washing machine, and we were together, and they would always say, he would always talk to the salesperson and say, you know, he was looking for this, he wanted that. And they didn't want to talk to him. They wanted to talk to his husband, which they always thought that I was his husband. We would just be cracking up. And then he wasn't, to me, he didn't look girly. He just had a lot of hair. And everything would be miss. And he would look at me like, watch this. Like, sometimes it would get on his nerves. And then it's another story. We were in the car driving. Well, he was driving. And the police stopped us. So, of course, they went through the routine. And they asked, with the drivers and registration, they asked for all that. So Trey was like, well, let me get it out of my car. So when he went to his glove compartment, an avalanche of condoms fell out. So the cop said, well, what are all those for? And he said, I chew them when I get nervous. And the cop screamed, so we died laughing. And then he used to call himself Licky Ella Muñeca, the doll, right? So if he called me collect. He called me collect one time, and the operator, she didn't want to say Licky Ella. So she was like, I have a collect call from, I knew who it was. I'm like, from who? She said, I said, oh, you mean Licky Ella? She said, yeah, that's the name. So we would be on the floor screaming and hollering about, you know, some of our encounters and some of the stuff that we used to do. Trey used to write me these letters. He used to write letters all the time. And in the letters, we used to have this thing called I Hate Men International, because we were the last two. We was never in relationships. We were always around people who were in relationships, and it was like, oh, you know, what are we doing wrong? why are we not attracting, people to be in these relationships? Well, I knew from my roommates that the relationships that they were in, some of them was like very toxic, abusive. So I was just gonna wait my turn because they had this thing where give Beau a hug because don't nobody love him. So Tracy write this in all the letters. And then he used to go refer to our friends who passed on. I scribbled it out, the shout out to my dead girlfriends. And then he said that he used to always say he used to just tolerate my bullshit. Because we used to just do silly shit. Then it was I Hate Men International. Then I got in a relationship and he got mad and said, all my membership was revoked, that I couldn't be in the club no more, that, I went against everything that we said and blah, 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 blah. But, we were getting older. It was time that we both had that experience, and I happened to have it before he did. So a lot of the letters, it talked about that. Oh, I think Trey passed in, I think it was 97. Trey also passed from a diabetic coma. That weekend, I was supposed to go home and visit him. And then our other friend, Jimmy, it was between me and Jimmy. And Jimmy said, you go. I'll go first and you can come later. So Jimmy went, and I spoke to both of them during the course of that day. Jimmy said he got up and he walked his dog. The dog is Sammy. He walked Sammy. And he came back and he said he thought nothing of it. Trey never came out of the room. And, as time went on, he knocked on the door, no response. And when he finally went in the room, he had passed. He was gone. Trey would drive over to New York, 2 hours, and he would come over here, and we would sit at my table. We would get drunk as a skunk. Sometimes he would spend the night and go home in the morning, and other times he would just ride back to Philly. He'd just be here for a couple hours. So in the conversations that we would have, he used to always say, I want to give a shout out to all my dead girlfriends. I want to give a shout out to all my dead girlfriends. I was like, bitch, if you don't stop saying that, they're going to summon your ass. They're going to call you. They're going to come and get you. So I would never say it. So we would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And they end up calling him. I told you not to say that. So the big topic of our conversation was we were the last two standing, and who was going to be the last one to tell the story. So I'm the last one. I have nobody to bounce off of who was there, who could actually verify some of the things that I've said that I'm saying, or who had that experience with me at those particular times that we all were together. He's somebody I miss dearly because we talked all day, every day. Moi, Renee. I first met Renee as Sam. We all lived in the same neighborhood. Sam, Antoine, and Tracy, they all went to high school together. So we would just bump into each other in the neighborhood. I can't remember exactly when or how, but we all lived 1 block away from each other, around the corner, up the street, but it was just a block away. Renee, he was the one that was creative. He was the one who got my creative spirit. He was a dancer. He would make all these outlandish outfits. He was very creative. Then we were supposed to move to New York together after we got out of high school. I wasn't ready. I had to, terrorize Philly before I actually came to New York. So he left. And I came to visit him. He was living on 72nd Street. with some old white guy. I think he told me he was on the board at one of the big museums, and this man was going to leave him all this money, and he had to stay with him for a certain amount of time. I was like, I am not doing that. I'm a free spirit. I'm not going to be in some kind of bondage relationship. I just thought it was weird. So, and the man was really nice. We went out to clubs. He didn't go out with us, but he was a very nice man. Then from there, he would come back and forth to Philly to visit. And by this time, we was doing drag, and we had our band Strange Beauty. So a lot of stuff that we were doing was influencing him back in New York. So finally, when I got a chance to come to New York, I went to Jersey first, and things didn't pan out like I had planned. So I called Renee, and I explained to him the situation that I'm in. And he said, sure, you can stay with me. So he had been here maybe 6 or 7 years already. So I'm thinking 6 or 7 years. He's probably established now. He probably got a job, he probably got a little apartment, whatever. So I get to his place. He let me in the building. When we got to the door of what I thought was his apartment, it was this little teeny room the size of a jail cell. The room was so small, you couldn't open the door. You had to crack the door and slide in because the bed was in the way. So I was like, oh God, like, really? Like, you've been here all this time and this is all you got to show for? He was a host at this club, Midtown 43. He was a party starter. Everybody knew him. I really wasn't a club person, but it was my introduction in New York, so wherever he took me, I went. So we went to all the clubs. He got in free, he backstage, DJ booth. The club gave him a party. He went to the after party. The club gave him like cases of liquor to take to this party. It was like he was a celebrity. We would go to the garage. The garage is just what it was. It was this huge, gigantic club that was, you would have thought you was on a football field. There was a club. They had a snack bar in there. They had movies. They had these little stalls where you could get dressed. They had a rooftop. Amazing. I seen him by his lonesome turn that entire club out with like 1,500 people in there, and all the focus was on him. So I'm saying that to say, that's how big his personality was. That's how big his character was. So I don't know how he, I don't know who and how he was approached to record this song, Miss Honey. But Miss Honey is a club cult classic by moi, Renee. They still bumping it in the clubs today.
Miss Honey, 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 Miss Honey.
The Village Voice incident with Ma Renee. Ma Renee was interviewed for this article about Caribbean gay bashing in Brooklyn. Like I said before, he was from Jamaica. He was Jamaican. And at this time, a lot, not all, but a lot of Caribbean people are very, very homophobic. And I think that's one of the reasons why he left home and came to New York. And he was explaining his family life, and he was explaining his life in New York as a creative person, as a Black, gay, Jamaican living in Brooklyn. So it was, the article was really extensive. It was him and a few other prominent gays of that period, but Renee actually made the cover. I think that was 95. It was a great article. I can't remember all that what was said in the article, but he was the feature person that they interviewed for the article. Ma Renee passed around I'm gonna say 94, 95, somewhere around there. The story I was told is Renee got murdered in the park in Brooklyn. I heard quite a few stories, but that's the story that I consistently heard. After that, you know, the last time I saw Renee, I was on 57th Street, and I had on these patent leather, iridescent lime green shoes. And he said he saw me from a distance, and he only saw the shoes, and he knew it was me. And we had some chit chat, we caught up, we hadn't seen each other in a couple years. The only time we would bump into each other would be for Pride. And maybe a year or two after that, that's when this horrific incident happened. And that was it. Charles is another person that I really love. Charles was younger than us. I met Charles in the early 80s, maybe like 81, 82. And when we used to hang out, you know, we would come back home and we would recap what happened, you know, that evening, that night, who we met, who we saw, this, that, and the other. And Tracy and Antoine came back and told me that it was this little young boy down there that looked like me, that he looked like we could be brothers. So, you know, I'm all into my head, all into myself. No, you know, I'm not accepting nobody that's not blood, that he could not be my brother, and I still hadn't seen him. So when I saw him, you know, I was all dialed up in character, and I had a boombox blasting Blondie. And they was like, that's him right there. So when I saw him, I was like, you don't look like me, like, you know, whatever. And, you know, we got introduced, and another person, we just clicked. It was no static in between us. It was like we had knew each other for years. And he ended up being like a brother to me. This is a story that I won't forget. I think he came by my house. I was at my mom's house, but I had already moved into my apartment, and we was gonna walk over to my apartment. And I had a bag of weed. So we're walking down Willen Avenue, and the cops stopped us on a racial profile tip. Some woman had just got her pocketbook snatched, and I fit the profile. So the cops, they arrested me, and they put me in the back seat of this police car. And I knew I had a bag of weed on me. I was trying to figure out how I was gonna get rid of this weed sitting in the back of the cop car. So I stuck the weed down in a glove that I had. And I just passed him my glove and some of the, I think I had papers or something with me, and I gave them to Charles. And then, you know, I got detained for a couple hours, and when I got out, he was at my mom's house, and he had told her what happened, and, you know, we laughed it off, but it could have went a whole entire different way. You know, and then another story, we were staying with another friend of ours, and I met this guy, and I introduced him to Charles. So I was like, this is my brother Charles. And of course, you know, Charles was younger than me, he was cute, right? So like, can I meet your brother? And I said, no, you cannot. So we would laugh about that, you know, no, you get your own dates or whatever. Charles was a singer. Charles was an incredible singer. Like, if you heard Phyllis Hyman, he was the male version of Phyllis Hyman. That boy could sing his ass off. He did background work for local folks in Philadelphia. We were entertaining the idea of auditioning him for the Strange Beauties. He was a singer. We was not on his level. So he came to a rehearsal, and they didn't want, Antoine and Tracy, they didn't want him to sing because he could really sing, and we weren't really singers. It was just something that we thought we could do, and we was gonna try to do it. And so he never sung that evening, but he was an incredible singer, and that's another loss that it's no telling where he would have been right now. Because out of all the people that I knew who could sing, he had the most potential. He had star quality. These big, gorgeous eyes. He had these little springy hair. Just beautiful. He was a beautiful kid. Charles passed maybe the late 80s, early 90s. He died from a diabetic coma. The story was, and I hope this is correct, that his parents went away for the weekend and they came back home and they found him dead. That was another loss. That was another one that just hit me in the heart. I met Antoine in the late 70s, maybe 78, in Philadelphia, to be exact, Southwest Philadelphia. And we were very popular in the neighborhood, so we didn't have any harassment or gay bashing. You know, all the guys loved us. So getting back to creativity, during this time, Philly International was at its peak. And then punk rock music was coming in. And of course, you know, being black and listening to R&B, you know, it's in our blood. It's how we're born and bred. So when I got exposed to this new music, this punk music that was coming in, because I think I was exposed to punk before I really got to hip hop. So I was sharing with Antoine and Tracy, you know, y'all gotta listen to this music, and it's, you know, it's adventurous, it's political, it's vulgar, it's exciting. So we started listening to this radio station called WKDU, which was a college station in Philadelphia. So I started, you know, exposing them to this stuff that I was listening to it. And they didn't really catch on. They didn't really get it. So I saw Blondie on TV. And this particular day I saw Blondie. Tracy was at my house. And I was like, you gotta see this white girl on TV. And we fell in love with her. So, you know, I introduced Antoine to Deborah Harry and Blondie. And we went out and bought the records, and we decided that we was gonna start our own band. We called ourselves the Strange Beauties. Thrift Shop Chic. Antoine he was the one between the three of us. He was the one that could sing. He actually had a voice. Now, I'm not gonna say how versed he was, but he sounded better than we sound. If you gave me directions, I could sound the way I'm supposed to sound. And then I used to follow his lead. So when we formed the band, I would write songs just about what gay life was at that point in time. And then I would review it with them. Then I would come up with melodies, and we started rehearsing in a street level basement. One of my cousins played for us. One of our childhood friends, he played for us. We met this weird guy named TJ on the street, and he just looked punk. So we asked him did he wanted to join our band. He said yeah. And then my cousin, you know, he's a musician, so he got some other guys to play for us. And then Tracy's sister, her boyfriend at the time, James, lived next door. And it started with James and my cousin Greg, and we would be in Tracy's kitchen making these songs up. My cousin would have his drum set up in the kitchen, James, you know, play the bass. And it started like that. But Antoine, I considered the lead singer of the group. Tracy was not, she wanted to be the lead singer. But Antoine was, he was his own person. Like one time we was downtown, and it was these new queens from Cincinnati. So I was, you should meet so-and-so and so-and-so. And he looked them right in the face and said, I already know enough queens. I don't want to meet them. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did you really have to do that? Antoine passed around, it had to be the late 80s. With Antoine, you know, the age it was running rampant. And we were hearing about everybody except for the people that we knew. So Antoine was the first person I actually knew, the person that was in my circle. I was still in New York, and I went home for the weekend, and I called him, and he said, "You come around because I got something to tell you." So I said, "Okay." So I go around his house, and his mother and his grandmother, they're watching TV, and the lights were really low, really dim. So, you know, I paid it amount. I sat down, waited for him to come downstairs, and we went in the dining room. The lights are still dim. So we're sitting there and we just having our usual conversation, but it was just something off about the conversation. And, you know, he just came right out and told me, he said, "I got the virus, I have AIDS." I just looked at him and I fell to pieces. And then when he turned the lights up, you know, I knew what he was saying. Because at that point, you could tell when somebody was sick, because you would get dark, your hair would get curly, your eyes would be really glassy. I was no more good. Like, I cannot explain to you emotionally what I was going through that day. So anyway, I was coming back and forth, you know, to visit him, to see him. If I was here, if he was in the hospital, you know, I would go to the hospital, we would have conversations. Then meanwhile, Tracy, she was in New York at the time, and she kept saying, "Well, how is he? You should call him. You should call him. You should call him. You should call him. You should call him." And I think she did. She finally went and saw him. And I can't remember when I got the call to say that, you know, he had passed. But we both were like, we were devastated. I first met Tracy in the late 70s, probably around 77. Again, we were all in the same neighborhood. We just were bumping into each other. All of us were bumping into each other. I can't pinpoint exactly when, where, and how. So Tracy and Strange Beauties, Tracy was very visual. She was like the centerpiece of Strange Beauties, because we used to call her the white woman, because me and Antoine, we were dark. So, you know, we would say Tracy was the white woman, and you know, if we got a deal that she was gonna get everything because she was lighter than us, what have you. I remember we did this photo shoot, which is in the book, where she's wearing this fishnet cat suit to upstage us. We thought that shit was funny as hell. And then, you know, when we would go to rehearsal, all the songs were like works in progress. So every time we would go to rehearsal, we would tweak the song to get it as best as we possibly could get it. So I remember one time we was in rehearsal at the RPM studio, and she went to the bathroom. So when she came back, we had worked other parts out in this background that we was doing. So when we started doing the song, we hadn't said to her, you know, the changes that we had made. So we was doing the song, and she starts shouting and screaming all this stuff, like the old background that we were doing. We was like, no, we're changing it. You know, it's too hard, it's too rough. We're gonna do it this way. And she just looked at us like really? She was very determined. She had a big heart. A hustler. That bitch could turn $2 into $2,200. Tracy, when she came to New York, she had a line of lipsticks. She used to sell these lipsticks, and she told me that how they chose whatever the lipstick of the year was going to be was whatever the latest car and the latest car color, that was going to be the popular lipstick of the season. So she went from that, and then she moved. She was in Brooklyn at the time, and then when she moved to Manhattan, she started her own production company, which was Strange Beauty's Production. Tracy was sort of a pioneer as far as that was concerned, because at the time, the New York LGBT gay scene was just starting to bubble. She wasn't actually a part of the scene because she wanted to be a singer. But when she saw Miss Terry, she became interested in hip hop. So it's a couple of the songs that Miss Terry recorded. Tracy worked with her on background vocals or whatever. But at the time, you hadn't heard of a trans person having a production company featuring trans artists. So she was kind of ahead of her time. Matter of fact, she was ahead of her time. She didn't even know it at the time. Tracy passed in 2020. I had a few projects that I wanted to work with Tracy on. And, you know, she kept telling me that, you know, she was sick and she was ailing, but she never exactly said. Matter of fact, yes, she did. She had heart bypass surgery. So when she went to the hospital the first couple times, she never told me, and the people that she was surrounded herself with, they never told me. So I felt some kind of way about that. But towards the end, I think the last 2 or 3 times that she went in the hospital, I was there, and then, you know, we had some of our final conversations. And this is when she, you know, she actually told me, you know, how severe her illness was. I remember, you know, the last time that I saw her, and it was odd, it was when I was leaving. She said to me, she said, I'll see you, Dee Dee. I was like, no, it's not Dee Dee, it's Beau. And she said, oh, I know. And then a friend of hers called me and said that, you know, that was going to be the day that she was going to, you know, expire. So I rushed down to the hospital, and we all sat there and just waited. Maybe 2-3 hours, she was gone. You know, that was the first time in my life that I actually sat and seen somebody just evaporate, you know. The main thing is we always told each other we loved each other.